Hey, what's up, everyone? AceOFSpades here, top 10 tank and farmer contenders player. So, another week, another Overwatch 2 tank guide. All right, so this week, we're going to go ahead and talk about Winston, probably one of the best dive tanks in Overwatch 2, if you ever find yourself in those situations, needing to get, high grounds contested and that type of stuff. So, let's go ahead and get into it and talk about everything you need to know about him. All right, so Winston has two left click, right click. Left click is an AoE zap, so you can hit multiple people at once with this, and as well as a right click, which is probably going to be one of the most useful abilities for Winston with his new kit. It lets you do a lot of poke damage from a distance. It does have a range though, so you can see it's not going to be able to hit that, but you can do it from pretty far away, so that's just something you'll have to go ahead and gauge and find out for yourself and get used to knowing like how far somebody is and if it's gonna hit or not. But yeah, so Winston is all about trying to build your primal as fast as possible, and this lets you do that from a distance for the mid-fight or pre-fight damage going back and forth. And yeah, so one of the combos that you can do with Winston that's really strong for when you do want to engage is you'll be charging up your right click. So it does have a max charge that it can do, so you can do like a little baby charge, or you can charge it up to full and it will do way more damage. Not exactly sure on the exact numbers. I'm not a huge numbers guy. I just like look at it. It's like, this should be able to kill him if I use it. But so what you'd want to do is you want to charge up your right click, smash, and then you're going to melee combo just as normal Overwatch 1 used to do. But now you pretty much just have that extra long distance zap you can do before you do the melee hit animation cancel. So it's just like, jumping, you're going to do that, melee cancel, and then you're good to go with, zapping once you're close range. Yeah, so make sure you want to melee before you land, because the landing animation cancels the melee animation, so then you can go back into, because if you do it wrong, you do this thing, you land and then you melee, you're missing out on that like half a second or however long it takes to finish the animation of zapping damage. So if you want to min max, then that's just the way to do it. Another tip for the right clicks is that if you do have facing like a pharmacy or something, it's pretty good to right click and just keep on zapping the mercies out of the sky, since you do have pretty much long range. It forces her to get out of position and not just stay up with the Pharah, because if you try and go for the Pharah first, you're probably not going to be able to kill the Pharah because it has the Mercy pocket, but Mercy's probably going to have very little healing, if unless the other healer's pocketing her. But if that's the case, then you can just dive the other healer, force Mercy to come down to you. It's a whole just circle of stuff that you have to worry about and see what's the best option in that situation. But yeah, the right click, definitely use as much as possible. And yeah, that's the first set of Winston's abilities. All right, so moving on ahead to his next ability, which is his leap. Probably going to be one of his most useful engagement, mobility type tools, but a lot of people still don't really know how to use his jump. And then this translates into the primals, and then it's just, those problems compound into even worse problems. So let's go ahead and talk about that and see like how you can understand like actually how to use his jump. So, he has his jump. Depending on how high you move your cursor is how high you are going to jump in that direction. So, if you do like super low, it doesn't matter. It's going to have like the same amount as if you just did it melee. But you can do, if you go straight up into the air, you're going to do like a high jump. So if you're like within the range, you don't have to like look straight down to do like a short jump. You can be like this and then it's going to be the same amount. But if you want to do like a high jump, then it's just, putting yourself up in the air and then going from there. But the next thing for Winston's jump is you can use the S key to do short jumps. So if you want to jump, you can hold S, do it shorter, so you can gauge how far you want to jump depending on how much you want to tap, S, because that's going to slow you down in the air. So make sure you're using that. You can see like, where the guy is. You're like, okay, cool. Need to make, you can move yourself depending on like how you want, in the air, based off like how they're moving. and all that type of stuff. All right, so going into his next ability now, which is going to be his bubble, pretty much what helps him do his engages and survive long enough for him to be able to disengage with his jump. Once you put it down, you say it's just a big dome shield, takes damage, normal shield situation, and has a pretty long duration. He probably usually won't last that long. He usually get broken pretty fast, but it's a good like initiator, and you can use it to block a lot of incoming damage or abilities that you don't want, such as, you see a Roadhog about to hook you, you can pop your shield and you can block the hook. One of the biggest things that you want to be looking for when diving with Winston onto Ana, you want to drop your shield a little bit beforehand, before you land, so then you don't get slept. So it's like if you're landing, you're going to drop it a little bit, so then by the time, when you're landing, it's landing with you, and also when you go up to like sleep dart you, it would be blocked by the shield. So that's just like, a small little tech tip that a lot of Winston's players will use with jumping and looking for the bubble, as well as like if a Widow is staring at you or something, instead of just, jumping straight into them, you're gonna want to do like 180 butt dives, and then you land, and then you're gonna be doing like, the melee combo and all that good stuff as well. So it's just something to think about when you're using all your abilities. Like Winston, you need to use them all together to get the most value on your engages. So just make sure you're thinking about that. And since you only have, your one lead thing you have to wait, make sure you're not just like diving into a team like 1v6. Make sure you're setting up dives, and you're looking for, which we'll talk about, more in the later part of the video. But yeah, just make sure you're actually like thinking about where you're diving, and whatever, because if once you jump, you're not having to escape for 6 seconds, and you're just going to easily be a target if you're going in by yourself. All right, so now going into probably his hardest ability in his entire kit is his Primal. A lot of people make the most mistake. They don't really know how to use it. They're just swinging their camera around, going crazy, thinking about what to do. The biggest thing when you are in your Primal, it's okay to take it slow until you get used to, using his Primal like slow and steady, thinking about where you want to try and hit somebody. And then as you get used to that and understand like how the juggle mechanic works, then you can start doing it, a lot faster and stuff. But for like beginners, and what you want to start off with is make sure you have like an idea of where you want to hit the person while you're primaling, right? So you don't want to just like land on them and then just like hit them in a random direction. Look for corners on the maps, look for environmental kills, all that type of stuff. Because if you can get somebody into a corner, then it's just like easy primals with your land damage, as well as if you get them into a corner, it's probably easy shooting for your teammates. As well as, if you can look to try and get somebody off an edge. Let's just say you want to do an engage. Your Primal does also reset the jump cooldown at the beginning and at the end. So if you want to need to try and catch up to somebody or something, then it's like bam. But as long as like, you're trying to look to see where you want to hit them and make sure you have an idea. So it's not just like, oh, I'm just going to hit them randomly and try and follow up. It's like, it's probably not going to work. With Primal, that's how people, get around you and all that stuff. So make sure you're, utilizing, doing short jumps, doing like the long jumps as somebody used movement abilities, all that type of stuff when you are using the Primal. All right, so one thing I forgot to mention was that, when you get into Primal, you do double your HP. So you can use this, as a get out of jail free card if you get low. As well as, to soak up a lot of damage when you want to look for these engages onto a squishy. But then make sure, you're using that secondary jump when your jump cooldown goes down to get out of there and, regroup with your team or jump to like a health pack or something like that. So you can see like, we'll do the whole combo, jump, melee, land or whatever. Then make sure after, you look to finish your Primal, let's just say like, you had jumped away. Once it goes out, your jump comes back. So you can use that as like, you can either double jump to get away or, jump in, finish the kill. And once your Primal gets out of that transformation, then, use that secondary jump a lot of times, catches people off guard. Because I don't think, Winston's can double jump and stuff. So, if you're looking at the cooldown timer correctly, you can either get a couple extra burst damages in, or escape and regroup with your team. So make sure you're thinking about that and know when your transformation is going to end. Okay, so now moving on to probably the saddest part of Winston is his counters. It's not very fun when you're playing Winston and somebody ends up just going, Reaper. They'll go Hog, um, and those aren't really very fun matchups to go against. Torb is another big one, since you get take a lot of damage, and then Torb can use his like health pack, shield mode or whatever, um, and then get a bunch of armor back. So Winston definitely has a lot of big counters. So we like Reaper, um, Bastion, uh, Torbjorn, Hog, Orisa, Ramach is really good into him. Those are like probably the main ones, like, off the top of my head. Like, you don't pretty, the only time you'd be using Winston is if they're doing like a Winston matchup. Winston's really good into Zarya. Um, you can do Winston into Reinhardt as well, but any of the other tanks, not gonna have the best or most fun time. Um, as well as any DPS that can, shoot from a good range or have like a health ability. There's a pretty good train of like thought for that. So yeah, just be aware of big heavy damage and healthy targets. Winston's probably not going to be the best for it, but if they have a lot of squishies, then that's where Winston really excels in. Like killing like Widow, Genji, stuff like that, and make sure once you're looking for their abilities to be used, like their dash or their leap, their roll, and then that's when you want to look to engage onto them, because that's when they're sitting duck. They can't really escape from you. So it's kind of like a little like cat and mouse game. Wait for them to use it and then engage off of those cooldowns. So positioning with Winston, it's probably one of the biggest things that a lot of beginner Winstons make mistakes of, knowing like where to position, where to go like pre-fight, mid-fight, all that type of stuff. So let's go ahead and talk about that. And the first thing with positioning with Winston is you want to be using high ground to your advantage. So whenever there is a high ground that you can be on, make sure you want to be on it, because it lets you potentially get close to a fight without having to use your leap. So then you can use your leap to escape and then get back up to high ground. Okay, so next for Winston is positioning after you've won the fight. So after you win fights with Winston, you want to try and push up as much as possible into the enemy line, whereas some other tanks might have to like play chokes and do all that sorts of stuff. Winston has the ability, since he does have his leap and high ground capabilities, to position pretty far forward. So let's just say this was on Gibraltar, then you'd be playing on Gibraltar second. You'd probably play at like the two ledges that are coming out this way and this way. You probably play at one of the top ones to watch. If they were to come bottom, then you can just drop on the people. If they try and come top on you, then you can be playing close to the edge and like zap them and then use your leap to get out if they try and push you, and you just get extra spam damage. The goal with Winston, get spam as much as possible, either with left click or your right click, build up Primal, and then with your Primal, go for the squishies or Sojourn, since Sojourn's probably going to be picked in every single game. Good Winston can counter a Sojourn and make it so he doesn't have a fun day, or kill the Mercy and then go for Sojourn, all that sorts of stuff. So after you win fights, always look to position far forward with Winston, but still you're not going to be like in their spawn, but as long as you have an escape route that's relatively safe, then you can do that. Now moving on to team comps that Winston is good with. Pretty much any dive hero or high mobility character Winston excels with. So, Genji, Tracer, Echo, you can do Pharah. Soldier, pretty decent. He's going on the flank. He's self-sustained character. But as long as you're setting up dives with these type of characters, then, Winston excels really well, because he doesn't have the highest damage output since it's like a slow zap. But if you combo that with, heavy bits of damage, then, that consistent damage helps you secure kills really easily when everyone's, jumping around, using their abilities and all that good stuff. So make sure you're calming. Say, hey, let's dive on a 3, 2, 1, jump, go. And then bang, you insta dive the Ana, killer, then move on to the next target. So keep calling and calming as much as possible when you are playing Winston, since it's hard for you to do stuff solo, but with somebody with you, then that's where his kit excels. And differentiates you from, a feeding Winston to one that's getting tons of value and can carry your team. Okay, so map picks that Winston is good with. So technically, you could use Winston on a lot of the maps because he has movement abilities. You can go from like low ground to high ground. I'd say Junkertown, probably not the best since it's so open. Winston won't really get much value unless you can get into like second and third point. But first point's definitely not very good. But so any map that has high grounds is Winston's specialty. So let's just say Gibraltar, Numbani, Dorado, second, has really good, potential for Monkey just because he can contest those high grounds, get to those supports, or escape and get healing. So it works both ways on offense and defense. Because a lot of the times some tanks, they might have like a stationary tank that doesn't really have high mobility, especially with the Ramattra being used so much. And a lot of the Ramattra players don't swap off Ramattra, let's be real here. So use that to your advantage. Take the fight, like low ground, and then if you see like a healer up high ground or something, use that to come with your DPS to go ahead and dive on them. And just be using that as much as possible, and that's how you can get around beating, a Ramattra or an Orisa, if you're using your mobility and the high ground potential to your advantage. So just keep that in mind when, you're playing Winston on certain maps. All right, well, I think that sums up everything you need to know about Winston. Make you the god Winston player out there. But yeah, hope it was helpful for you. Learn something new. Let me know what you liked, disliked. I'm always about trying to like learn and make these, guides better as we go along. But make sure to subscribe, like, comments, all that stuff does help in the YouTube algorithm. So I appreciate you guys for watching all the way to the end. And till next week. Peace.